Coming up on Why Should I Trust You? During RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, there were many voices engaging in testy exchanges with the incoming secretary. But one voice cut through the noise and went viral. Senator Maggie Hassan, the Democrat of New Hampshire, and mother of a son with cerebral palsy. She shared an emotional story of feeling guilt, of a mother's love, and the daily struggles of disability. Today, we speak with the senator. When it comes to finding the root causes of autism and other conditions, where does she see eye to eye with MAHA moms and dads? And on what issues are they miles apart? How does she think we could bridge those divides? Could they ever find common ground on, say, vaccines? Finally, does a Democrat who represents the live free or die state see an opportunity for her party to reconnect with the public on health, a public that has lost their faith and their trust in them? Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. We're back together. We're all back. Mark, welcome back. Maggie, welcome back. Mark, you were on assignment.
I was. I feel like it's been so long since we've done this, but it's really just a week that we've passed.
Don't ever do this to us again. Don't ever leave us. And Tom, you recorded headlines. I'm so grateful.
How's your voice? How do you feel?
You know, if I sound like a squeaky little mouse who smokes 10 packs a day, I don't know what's gotten into me, but it's pollen, allergies. I don't know what it is, but this is not okay. So I'm drinking some tea. I'm going to try to.
Well, we muddled through the
Out of your Star Wars mug. That'll help.
That's right. Go Star Wars. Okay. So, Tom, who the heck are we? Why are we here?
Yeah. So you're Brenda, you and I, journalists. We've got Dr. Maggie Bartlett, who's a virologist, and Dr. Mark Abdul-Malik.
We are a tight little team. Hey, listen, I'm going to try this up top. I want you guys to please, if you like our show, if you've liked the previous episodes, please do leave us a rate, leave us a review. You can do it on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And also, if you have any questions, comments, just, vibe and tell us your thoughts at questions@whyshouldItrustYou.net.
We love those. We answer them.
We do answer them. We love getting fan mail, All right. Well, listen, today is a big day for us. We have a big guest because we are moving up in the world, y'all. We are having senators on our show. Huh? Right. I know. We're in the big leagues now.
Nobody told me that.
We're in the big leagues now. So as we mentioned.
We're so excited about it, actually.
We really are. As we mentioned, Senator Maggie Hassan is a Democrat from New Hampshire who serves on the Senate Health Committee. And back in January, Senator Hassan, she spoke very powerfully at the confirmation hearing for RFK Jr. to become Trump's head of Health and Human Services. And I got to tell you guys, this one really resonated with me. I remember listening to the clip and I got a little choked up. To be perfectly honest. And I think it resonated with me most strongly because I'm a mom. And really, this is the clip that kind of led us to wanting to invite her on the show. So I'm going to play a portion of what she said when it was her turn to ask RFK Jr. some questions. It's about a minute and a half or so long. So this is Maggie Hassan back in January.
Now, some of you are new to this committee and new to the Senate, so you may not know that I am the proud mother of a 36-year-old young man with severe cerebral palsy. And a day does not go by when I don't think about what did I do when I was pregnant with him that might have caused the hydrocephalus that has so impacted his life. So please do not suggest that anybody in this body of either political party doesn't want to know what the cause of autism is. Do you know how many friends I have with children who have autism? The problem with this witness's response on the autism cause and the relationship to vaccines is because he's relitigating and churning settled science so we can't go forward and find out what the cause of autism is and treat these kids and help these families. Mr. Kennedy, that first autism study rocked my world. And like every mother, I worried about whether, in fact, the vaccine had done something to my son.
Yeah. So, I know that, yes, of course, she went after Kennedy and she was very strong in her words. But as a mother, as a parent, as really just a person, it was really powerful to me.
Yeah. There was a lot of, it was just so charged with emotion. I close my eyes. I imagine Republicans, Democrats, independents doesn't matter. I think she broke through in a really unique way. I was struck, and I know we're going to talk about it with her, about these emotions of guilt as a mother and these fears that, as she says, that did she do something to cause this? And that was stunning.
Yeah. And I would just say that, we've all spoken with so many MAHA moms and dads, and I couldn't help but imagine some of the people I've spoken with who also have children who either have autism or some other condition, who are from MAHA, who also feel that same pain and rage about either being told that they did something wrong or they may have done something wrong. And I think it just sometimes sends people on different journeys, that
Sure.
Somebody who's part of the Make America Healthy Again may have chosen one path and Senator Hassan chose another path. And then at the top of that, you've got Secretary Kennedy, gets very different reactions from both those groups. To one group, he is the person who's really listening to them. To another group, he is the person standing in the way of progress. And I find that so interesting. Mark, what do you think?
I mean, I remember watching that live. You're watching the hearings and they're going on and on and on, and you're doing other things. But when she comes on, I mean, her voice is breaking. And I hope that what she knows that we also heard, and it's unmistakable in her voice, is a mother who's never stopped fighting. I mean, she talks about her son and how old he is and, still living at home. And you could imagine that in the back of her mind, she's thinking about what her son needs in that very moment. So she's never stopped fighting. And that's intense, and that comes with a price. And I think you can feel it and hear that in her voice. And the other thing I thought about, because the debate about science is so much, and even though so many of us put so much faith in science, I think it's a key moment, because it doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge that there's a limitation of science and believe in science. Because I think she knows she didn't cause it. And there's really almost no amount of science, no counseling, even if she had a report that said, this is a genetic mutation that caused this, that'll really never fully dismantle the parents' instinct to blame themselves. And I think it's a moment, because any of us could find ourselves in a difficult health situation like that. And it doesn't have to be with a child. I mean, your own health, a cancer diagnosis in somebody, and then you really start to this process of guilt and how that can really, impact how you move forward. And I think it's impacting her, how she moved forward in her home, but also, as we see, in her job.
Boy, that's such a good point, Mark. And I actually just want to pin it down even further, because I think it gets at this fundamental difference in philosophies that I perceive with the Make America Healthy Again movement and some people within it, and then folks in sort of mainstream science and public health, where, this belief that you can control your health, and that you and what you put into your body and exercise and vitamins, and that if you make the right choices, you will be healthy. And I think sometimes that just comes crashing into a reality when you give birth and you think you sort of, quote unquote, did everything right, and you have a child with a severe disability, and then your head goes to, well, what could have caused this? And I get that instinct. I totally get why people get really nervous about vaccines. And because that moment, you just feel like, man, did I do this? And that's just, your world can fall apart if you go down that road,
Yeah, totally. And that's why she talks about that study coming out that's now been absolutely totally debunked, linking vaccines to autism. And she's like, when that came out, that rocked my world, because that probably sent her, or it sounds like it sent her, on a whirlwind of emotions. And again, that feeling of maybe I am to blame. Maybe I did something. Was it the vaccine that I approved for my child? Was that the thing that did this? And that's just heart-wrenching.
And she's taken it on as a fight now. I mean, Mark, I think you were looking at something where she's been very forceful about Kennedy and this particular study. As we know, he's all in on looking at the causes of autism.
His new investigation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he gave that speech where he talked about, he described autism in a way that didn't really resonate with a lot of people who actually have autism. And she's pretty strong. I mean, she says, after she heard that, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could help the country take a step forward if he actually listened to families, caregivers, healthcare providers, and scientists who actually understand autism and are doing the work to identify its cause or causes. And then she even goes further. I mean, she says Secretary Kennedy is using a position of great power to continue to exploit the vulnerabilities of millions of Americans, all for the purpose of spreading his own unfounded and fully debunked beliefs. So she is out there trying to raise a flag to say, look, we can't just, pretend that we've not looked at this issue before. We've made so many advances, and it's dangerous. It's almost, I think she even says, it's almost like a waste of time to go backwards and do some of these studies if we know, and if we do invest in all of that, what are we missing? What are we missing our chance at?
And more than a waste of time, like an absolute waste of bandwidth to actually go out and get the answer that everybody wants, like build on what we've done for years, for decades.
Yeah.
We're now relitigating, creating mistrust in sort of the ground we've already covered. So she's angry.
Yeah. I do want to just put one more thought in. That comment you were talking about, Mark, was, I think, in reference to that response from Senator Hassan was in reference to that press conference that Secretary Kennedy made talking about autism and people living with autism. And
yeah, and what they'd never be able to do, would never hold a,
would never hold a job, or pay taxes,
baseball,
or fall in love.
Yep.
And I know that just blew up in the world, but I do want to give some grace to that comment, because I do believe he was talking about people with severe autism. And there are many parents who have come forth since then to say what he said did speak to me. Yep. And it did speak to my reality, because the fact is my child won't ever pay taxes and won't ever be able to take care of themselves. And I know that it's really tough in a society where we are trying to empower folks who are differently abled. And I really do feel that. But that is a moment that me personally, I can give some grace to Secretary Kennedy. I feel like he was talking to people who were severely autistic. And there was an article in the New York Times just this past weekend from a mother who doesn't agree with him on most things. But she said, I found myself nodding along as Mr. Kennedy spoke about the grim realities of profound autism. And so I just put that out there. I know that may not land well with some people who are listening, but that is how I feel.
I think, though, in a way, it's a tool he uses, and it does sometimes speak to what people say is a weaponization, right? And so is he weaponizing the most vulnerable to make a point? And I think that's where, people had a problem with it, right? So autism is a spectrum. It's not just one thing, and to talk about it so broadly as if the causes for all of it are the same, it just makes people who are living well with autism really wonder if he gets their life too. But you're right. I mean, there's certainly obviously people who have it to the extreme degree that all of those things were true. But, part of medicine is nuanced. And if you're going to be speaking from a position of power, I think people want to make sure those nuances.
Yeah. No, that is definitely true. Before we bring the senator in, we want to talk to her about the way we view health in this country. But Tom, before she joins us, help us set the table a little bit.
Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about New Hampshire, where she's from, the state that she represents. The Cato Institute put out a list called Freedom in the 50 States, and it ranks all of our states based on, quote, how their policies promote freedom in the fiscal, regulatory, and personal realms. And it's no surprise, the live free or die state came out on top. So that means of all the 50 states, the granted staters love freedom. They love freedom from the heavy hand of government. They love low taxes. They love that sort of more than any other state in the way that Cato measured this. So Senator Hassan knows a thing or two about connecting with people who are skeptical, deeply skeptical of big government, of government overreach. And it's interesting because obviously those are similar themes, that resonate with the people that we're seeing today who are drawn to the medical freedom movement and MAHA. So Senator Hassan was a lawyer, and then she ran and served at the state level before becoming governor. And now she's the junior senator from that state. And she's really known for bipartisanship. She was recently named the most bipartisan member of the U.S. Senate, and that was a distinction that she was given by a nonpartisan organization called the Common Ground. So here she is, this bipartisan Democrat from a, very libertarian trending state, longstanding libertarian state. But she's also a Democrat at a time when that party is in the dumps. The party's favorability right now is just sitting at 29%. And that's the lowest that CNN, who did that track, that's the lowest they've polled dating back to 1992.
That's right now the Democratic Party.
That's where the party, in terms of favorability across the country, stands. And when you drill down into the senator's home state, it's even bleaker. So one group did a study that said, in people in New Hampshire, do you trust that the national government, the federal government, will do what's right just about all the time? Like, you're really on board that the government, the federal government's kind of doing the right thing really most of the time. Only 1% of the people of New Hampshire said yes to that statement. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's grim. It's a grim time to be at the federal level. And it'll be interesting to talk to her about some of the things that are flying right now.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the political environment that Senator Hassan is operating in today. But we talked about a little bit, but I think to really understand about her personal journey and story, and that is what she says is what got her into public service in the first place. And really the cornerstone of that is her son, Ben. So Ben is, and she's been public about this. He's 36 years old and he has cerebral palsy, which is, a lifelong disability that begins in infancy. But, as we see, anybody who knows anybody with cerebral palsy, it can shape a person's life in countless ways, from childhood all the way to adulthood. And according to the senator, Ben, her son needs around-the-clock care that is provided by skilled caregivers that she says are the reason he can still live at home with her. These are intense services that he needs. So in the clip we played, she discusses her pregnancy more than 3 decades ago, and then the worry she has had over all these years that, maybe she's the one who did something to cause, and she uses the word hydrocephalus that has so impacted his life. She mentions hydrocephalus, and what that is an imbalance in the production and drainage of basically the fluid that surrounds your brain. So CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So it's this clear fluid that is constantly flowing and cushions and protects the brain, but we don't really know what causes it. And, it's not anywhere close to being fully understood. It's a mix of things, either genetic or environmental. Maybe it's an infection during pregnancy, maybe an infection she didn't even know she had. It could be, a moment where there was some internal bleeding in the developing brain, or trauma during the delivery or during the pregnancy, or maybe a congenital thing. I mean, there's just a list of things that could cause it. But, the problem is when you have it, you get too much fluid that builds up and it doesn't drain properly, and it creates a pressure inside the skull. And then that pressure causes damage in the brain and brain tissue. And then essentially what that leads to is the symptoms that you see in something like cerebral palsy. So it's a neurological disorder. It's not a degenerative disorder. So it doesn't get worse and worse and worse and worse, but your symptoms do evolve as you go through life. You start to become more spastic. It can affect your muscles, your posture, and you can have mild cerebral palsy, maybe not even that noticeable. You can go to college and, walk around and do all these things, or you could be severe. There's no cure, unfortunately. But for Ben, the senator has described him as being locked into his body. He's able to understand everything, but really only able to communicate with gestures and facial expressions. And he uses a wheelchair, but it's amazing when you see these people actually able to communicate how their loved ones can really understand almost a full spectrum of their emotions. And it's a skill. It takes such a commitment on everybody involved to get to that point.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, guys, just in case you're wondering, why aren't we letting Maggie talk? It's because she had to run out for a second. She's going to be part of our conversation with the senator in just a minute. So look, suffice it to say that Senator Hassan has been on a remarkable journey caring for her son, Ben. And like we also said, she is a Democrat, which is a very unpopular party to be a part of right now. And she represents a state known for its libertarian streak. We want to ask her about this moment we're in, with so many Americans losing their trust in government, our institutions, and the scientific community. We will ask her if she sees a path forward. So in a moment, we're going to be joined by Senator Maggie Hassan. We'll be right back. Okay, now we're back and we are joined by Senator Maggie Hassan. Thank you so much for joining us on Why Should I Trust You?
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
We want to let you know that before welcoming you onto the show, we were playing that clip you had at the hearing that was so powerful when you spoke so forcefully and emotionally about being the mother of a son with cerebral palsy. And I'd like to start there. What were you trying to communicate to Secretary Kennedy and really to all of us in that moment?
So I had not planned to talk about my personal situation, my family at all. This was the second day of hearings that I had with Secretary Kennedy, because I'm on both of the committees that had confirmation hearings for him. And what had struck me at the end of the previous day's hearing in the Finance Committee was that Secretary Kennedy was being quizzed about the debunked study on the connection between vaccines and autism. And he couldn't bring himself to just acknowledge that there was gold standard science that now showed that the first study wasn't true, which was a small study. At some point, one of my Republican colleagues questioned whether Democrats actually wanted to know the cause of autism. And I thought, just all these bells went off for me. I thought, really, we've gotten to this point where this has become so divisive, this confirmation process, that we're thinking that there are some Americans who don't want to know how we could prevent autism, how we could better treat autism, how we can support families with autism. And that's what drew me to share my own personal experience. One, I wanted to get through to Secretary Kennedy a bit about why his intransigence on this issue was so difficult and so damaging. But I also was trying to talk to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and just say, hey, folks, we're all human. We're all parents. We all have friends and family who are impacted by autism and other disabilities. And I just really wanted to try to recenter the hearing a little bit around those values.
It worked. I'll tell you that. I mean, I really, again, as a mother, I really responded to that moment. I shared it with people. And, I just want to say that I think that there's folks, on our show, we talk to a lot of folks who are from the Make America Healthy Again movement, moms and dads who really believe in that. And right. Even though I haven't explicitly talked about this moment with them, I have to think that moved them too, that, y'all are all trying to find what the root causes are of things that really move you.
I thank you for that feedback. Again, it was one of those moments where you just feel like wanting to connect people as people again. There are plenty of reasons for Americans to be frustrated by our healthcare system. There's plenty of confusion about science and the scientific method, which is what I grew up, when I was in high school, that's what I thought I was studying the scientific method, right? That's right. But at the end of the day, we all want our families to be healthy. And, my grandmother's words always come back to me, that old saying, if you have your health, you have everything. And I think all of us understand that. And the system needs to work for everybody. And we got a lot of work to do.
Yes, Senator, I really appreciated what you said. It really resonated with me. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about something that you brought up that day, too. You had said there really wasn't a day that goes by that you don't think about what you did when you were pregnant with Ben and whether something you did might have caused his cerebral palsy. And just myself, I was born with cataracts and I was diagnosed with OCD before I could even talk. And I know my mom felt a lot of guilt. She blamed herself. And so I wonder, I know that there was nothing she did that caused it, but as a mother, can you talk about some of those feelings of guilt that you have?
Sure. I think all of us, mothers and frankly, fathers too, always worry about the impact of our own behavior and our own health on our children. For moms, of course, that your physical health is directly connected to the fetus's health and to the baby's health. And so, especially because, Ben was born in 1988, and that's, we were full into all the warnings that pregnant women are told, don't drink, don't smoke, get your sleep, don't drink too much caffeine, don't drink any caffeine. You begin to think, gee, was I too casual about one of those warnings one day? I think women need to know that, we all know throughout history, people have healthy babies, people have babies who are sick. Sometimes babies don't make it during the pregnancy, right? And that's part of life and part of nature, and mothers shouldn't feel particularly responsible for these things. But it is a hard thing to shake,
Yeah.
when you're living with the reality of it.
Yeah. I mean, Senator, when you hear the MAHA moms, I mean, you hear a movement that has been fueled in part by fear or positions that are triggered and then often just solidified by frustration and a need to protect kids. And I wonder, if putting, your scientific or ideological disagreements aside and your, deep concerns with, Secretary Kennedy as the leader of the movement, putting all your disagreements with him aside, do you have a thread in common with any part of that movement, or recognize, yourself or a piece of yourself in that kind of fight, for the children?
I think one of the things that has, maybe the way to put, I've been reflecting on, is that when I hear a lot of the concerns that are expressed by what I'm told is the MAHA movement, or I see MAHA moms on TV, I don't feel like they're very different than most of the moms and dads, frankly, that I know, right? I think we are all concerned in this modern world of ours about the things that are influencing our children's health that the scientific community has not done a whole lot of work to investigate. I think about the parents in New Hampshire who came to me when I was governor about PFAS exposure. PFAS are those forever chemicals, right? And the concerns they had about the impact of PFAS in the drinking water, which was high. We had one community because of industrial pollution, another community that was right near an Air Force base that had very high levels of PFAS in their water. We all want to get to the bottom of toxic exposures and pollution and the impact that has on our kids. I think we need to investigate more the impact of highly processed foods on our children and on our society and on chronic health. I think there's a lot of work to do about understanding whether there are toxins out there that are driving kind of the allergy rate up, right? I think that there is common ground there. And when I talk to constituents, I hear from as many Democrats who are concerned about these things as I do from Republicans. I think there is a lot of distrust about the scientific community and our healthcare system that adds to this sense that nobody's looking at the right things, or the things that I, as a mom, are kind of sure in my soul have something to do with this, right? And I think that there are ways to address that, but we all have to start, and it kind of comes back to, what I said at that second hearing with Mr. Kennedy. We all have to understand that we share the desire for our children and our families and ourselves to be healthy. We all share, I think, the concern that a lot of toxins, pollution, and influences in the modern world, including social media, are impacting our children in really serious ways. And I think we all should be looking at our healthcare system, including our scientific research system and investments, and saying, come on, folks, we need to catch up to the 21st century here. And I think that that's universal. And that's why I think that there's real potential here for redirecting some investments and adding some investments in a way that will be true to good science. So we're not wasting money and we're not giving people false hope or bad results. But I will say that that to me is a separate issue. Making progress in that way isn't going to be helped by what I'm seeing the Department of Health and Human Services right now under Secretary Kennedy's leadership do, making massive cuts into clinical research, laying off a lot of the people who oversee things like addiction treatment. Those are at cross purposes. So I am very interested in hearing more from MAHA moms and really helping forge a path forward on what kind of research and what will it take to do the kind of science we need to do around some of these issues. But
and by the way, Senator, we can make some of that happen. If you're ever interested,
I'd love that.
We've developed some relationships with MAHA moms and dads, and I think they'd love to sit down, because I'll tell you, you sound an awful lot like a MAHA mom sometimes, like some of the stuff you're saying, I think is really going to resonate. Tom, you had something you want to add.
I just want to pivot a little bit, and you raised the cuts. There's so much attention to the MAGA movement that at its core, this is a populist uprising that's drawn to a leader that is fighting for a vulnerable sector of our population that was lost their jobs, that they were ravished by the opioid epidemic, and
Right.
they're really looking for a defender.
Yeah.
And then I've heard you talk passionately about, as a society, as a nation, we have to care for the health and dignity of our most vulnerable.
Right.
Do you do you ever think that there's a way to make a common bond with MAGA, that we all need to defend the most vulnerable in our society? Like, what would you say to them to try and create that opening that there could be common ground here?
Look, I think that most Americans value their neighbors and value each other. My dad, who was a World War II veteran, always said to me, you don't have to like every other American, and you won't, because we're Americans and we disagree and we have different personalities, but you do have to love them, because what binds us is our common love of freedom. And that love of freedom means, to your point, that we respect the dignity and freedom of vulnerable people as well as powerful people. I have to say that I wouldn't necessarily characterize what I see as the full MAGA movement as led by this president the same way you do, because I don't think this president is demonstrating in his actions that he's standing up for vulnerable people. And I don't think his administration is. And I think that that's part of kind of the dilemma and the need for more conversation, because what Donald Trump says, I think does make people feel that they've got an ally and a defender, people who feel that they've been marginalized and not listened to. What he does, on the other hand, from my perspective, as somebody who, has been a governor and a senator in a small purple state, I think there's a real disconnect for me there, because I think there's lots of room for improvement, whether it's in our healthcare system or our government altogether. There's a lot of people feel pretty alienated from our government, and I think we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to say President Trump said some really, really rough things about the disabled community. It just seems like the people of the MAGA movement, might be open to making this a common cause.
Yeah, no, look, and I mean, because you guys cover healthcare so much, I'm the mother of an adult son with really complex medical needs. At one point he had something like 9 doctors and almost 20 medications. Getting a primary care doctor who had the time to help us coordinate Ben's care felt almost impossible, and yet that should be the most straightforward thing to do. It's good for Ben's health, it's good for efficiency, it's good for minimizing expenditures, all those things, and it was almost impossible. We live in a country that has some of the best healthcare in the world and some of the worst healthcare in the world. Yeah. And that disconnect is infuriating. And when you are fighting for a loved one who needs that healthcare, who needs the mystery of their illness solved, and you can't find somebody who will kind of partner with you as opposed to dismiss you for being worried, that is at its core one of the things that undermines our healthcare system and our health the most. And that's something where I think a lot of people from all political perspectives could get together to try to work on. And it's something that, everything from maternal health, which is in crisis, some of our children's healthcare issues, which are so concerning, to the opioid epidemic, where we have the tools now to integrate opioid therapy, medication-assisted treatment into primary care, but we're faltering because we don't have an adequately coordinated system. Those are all things I think we could get together to work on.
Senator Hassan, so now I'm going to put my, you're a senator representing the Democratic Party hat on for a second. And this party's approval rating is in the dumps, man. You know that.
Yep.
And I see, what I see is in our conversations that we have with folks who are a little bit skeptical of government and science and public health right now, there's this real opening, it seems, for a working class, middle class healthcare platform that sometimes I just look at your party. I'm like, come on, guys, it's there for the taking. What are you doing? Don't you ever feel that? You're a senator on the health committee. to me, MAHA has sort of leapt on this opening. And to a certain degree, I think the chronic health thing is really resonating with people. But when they talk about organic foods and stuff, it leaves a lot of people behind. And I'm like, where are the Democrats right now talking about healthcare as a movement? So I just put that to you for a second, Senator, not to represent the whole party, but you know where I'm coming from.
Look, I think there are lots of reasons that people haven't heard Democrats talking about what, frankly, in my experience, Democrats have been talking about for my whole life, which is making the healthcare system better, more accessible, more affordable, more coordinated. I could sit with you and give you list after list of things we propose in the Health Committee that we think are common sense ways to make sure that our kids are healthy. You know, Democrats have been pushing to make sure that every public school in America has meals for kids, regardless of their income, every school day, and sends them home if they need it with food over the weekends, because that's such a foundational thing to health and social emotional well-being for our kids, right? So there's a lot that we do. How we talk about what we do and where we talk about what we do, I think, is one of our biggest challenges. It's one of the reasons I'm so glad for podcasts like yours and for offers to sit and connect with people who might feel like they've never heard a Democrat talk about things where they might have common ground. But, you know, whether it is Democrats pushing for a lot more testing on things like toxins in our water, those forever chemicals, or whether it's Democrats trying to make sure that you're all of a sudden not charged a whole lot more for an outpatient procedure just because you happen to go to a doctor's practice that was just bought by a hospital. There's a lot of bipartisan work we've done. And then there are some Democratic specific things to just try to make sure that people can get health care when they need it. But there's also a lot of work that goes on kind of behind the scenes more quietly that is truly bipartisan. And I wish more Americans just knew the fact that a lot of us in the Senate, both parties are friends, we get along, and we do a lot of bipartisan work together. And that might be another really important area of focus. One of those areas is maternal.
It's never talked about, you know.
No.
Yeah.
No, look, I really appreciate what you're saying. And I just want to sort of leave with this one thought, which is in our conversations with just regular Americans out there, healthcare costs are crippling them. It is burning them out. It is a thing that they feel like they want a revolution in this country about that. And I really see that whichever party takes that on is going to be victorious, because it's crazy for a country as rich as ours to have to be dealing with the healthcare system as we have it. So I'm going to keep pushing you guys and keep pushing whichever party that'll hear it. I know you guys do stuff, but I'm talking about a platform. I'm talking about a movement.
Well, let me just push back at you a little bit. Right now, you all know there's only so many things you can do all at once, right? Right now, we have an administration and a group in Congress, the Republican majority, that is talking about taking away Medicaid from a third of the Medicaid population. In my state, that's thousands of people who are getting their addiction treatment through Medicaid expansion. It's thousands of kids with disabilities. It's thousands of seniors. Nationwide, this is millions and millions of people. Medicaid expansion was put into place so that people who are struggling to get to work because they've got a chronic illness, but they can't get treated because they don't have health insurance, could actually get treated, get healthy, and then get back to work, right? We have been fighting for affordable health care as a party since we pushed through Medicaid and Medicare in the 1960s. There is a lot of work to do because part of this is healthcare technology has just raced forward. We are great innovators in the United States, but that means it's got really expensive. And we do have to reset that. I would always be happy to talk about the platform that we have that would do that, the steps that we've taken to lower costs of pharmaceuticals, for instance, and protect people. A lot of us think that you shouldn't be able to be taken to bankruptcy because of medical costs, right? Among other things. But there's a lot of work to do. Last thing I think I would just say, as we're talking about MAGA and the MAHA movement and everything, I am the granddaughter of a pediatrician who started practicing medicine in 1921, before penicillin, before vaccines. Grandpa always used to say to us, the most important developments, and he practiced for about 65 years, the most important developments in his medical practice were vaccines, clean drinking water, and penicillin. And I don't want us to be pulled back because of distrust about where we are right now. I think the COVID pandemic had a lot to do with kind of fueling this distrust. I think with some, I have my own theories about that. That's for another day. We have a lot of work to do to come back together as a country, understand how we approach science, understand how to listen to people who say, but you're not investigating the things that we think are impacting our kids, and find a way to plan a future where we can address these issues together without pulling ourselves back and rejecting some of the superb things we've done. My grandfather said, what a relief it was not to see kids dying of polio and seeing parents feeling relaxed about their kids going out to play in the summertime, right? That impacts our quality of life. And I don't want us to move backwards. And I think that was also some of the things I was trying to say to Secretary Kennedy, which is just, we don't want to relitigate the past. Let's come together around the future, learn from the difficulties and divisions we've had, and move forward.
Boy, Senator Hassan, I will tell you that message will resonate with a lot of people. And I really do hope your team takes me up on the offer of, perhaps facilitating some conversations with some moms and dads who perhaps aren't politically aligned with you, but they're very much aligned as far as trying to get at the root causes of a lot of the things ailing us. So thank you.
I'd love to do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. It was really just such a delight speaking with you. I know this is longer probably than you have time for, but we really do appreciate you coming on to our show.
I really appreciate all of you. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
So that was Senator Maggie Hassan. Hey guys, I thought she was lovely. I'm really glad that she came onto our show, honestly.
Yeah, I appreciated her answer on the sort of the politics of it. Democrats have been in the position of defending Obamacare, defending, Medicaid expansion, while at the same time, the Republicans have shifted around and grabbed hold of this MAHA movement. Her focus, I'm sure right now as the senator, is to defend Medicaid from cuts. So but I did appreciate, her answer on, maybe there's a way to start crafting a message for sort of a middle class or working class health platform.
I think she's going to text me and invite me to the bipartisan parties.
I know. I'm like, yo, is there like bipartisan happy
Could I go?
hours?
Yeah.
Red and blue drinks. I mean, I'll just say this. I hear this from Democrats that like, hey, look, we are the party of health and we have all these things we're doing and we push those things forward. I hear that, but we're just in a different moment now, y'all, that like if that's either not coming across or somehow the value isn't being felt in real world terms by the people, it's sort of like if a tree falls in a forest kind of a situation. I don't even know like what that metaphor was. What if a tree falls in a forest? Maggie, what'd you think?
Well, I just think that, it is a message that the Democratic Party has said, but it's been going on so long. And I think as somebody who's had a chronic health condition, as somebody whose mom had a chronic health condition and who's seen these things go on, the promise of it getting better is there, but there haven't been huge impact down to the people who really need it yet. And I think that that's part of why there was that appeal in we're going to blow up the system and get some real help.
I also thought it was very good how she was so thoughtful about, so many of the aspects and the nuances. And, she's been thinking about the MAHA movement. She's been thinking about the infrastructure of our healthcare system. She's been, thinking about cost. She's, approaching all of this from a holistic way, which is so in line with, a lot of the, health movements, even the MAHA movement, this holistic approach. And I think if she can continue her messaging, I think she will resonate with a lot of people who want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, these things have to start somewhere. These conversations have to start somewhere. I think I told her that I was going to set up a conversation with MAHA moms, so I'm going to get on that.
Sure did.
She took you up on it.
I think actually there will be quite a few who would be interested. So I'm gonna
Probably
give that.
constituents, you know.
I thought,
What was
sorry,
that, Maggie?
one other thought. I just really thought it was interesting the way she phrased, what are we researching? Is this what parents want, the research dollars to be focused on? And I kind of think, when I see a research call, I'm going to work on what's interesting to me, but I'm also going to address it to that specific need. And so it kind of brought to mind that there are a good pool of things that we need to be focused on, that I want to make sure that when we move forward, that we are focusing on things that move that forward instead of, like what she said so eloquently, moving back 100 years.
Right. Well, listen, I want to thank Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat of New Hampshire, for joining us. You're Tom, you're Dr. Mark, you're Maggie Bartlett. Please, like we said, send questions, comments, anything, haikus to questions@whyshouldItrustyou.net. Rate, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you right back here next week.